Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Lost in Criterion. I'm John Patrick Owatari Dorgan, and with me today, as always, is a man who wisely decides and we gladly obey.
I am the Adam Glass. This week we are talking about Ingrid Bergman's 1975 adaptation of the Mozart opera, The Magic Flute. It's very interesting to swing from last week with The Last Temptation of Christ, one of our most deeply, I'll say profound movies, to this very lighthearted comic opera. With still a lot of drama to it, but it is...
It is wonderful, is what it is,
Let's start this off with that. Mozart himself, in creating this, not only did Mozart really create the idea that you could have an opera not in Italian, he with the Magic Flute created an opera that is both comedic and dramatic, mixing genres in that way. That is not something that was done prior either. I do want to start this conversation off, though, before we get too much onto that, by saying that the original Swedish name for this movie is called Trollflögen, and that Trollflögen, or Flögen, I really have no idea how to pronounce it, but it looks like a horror movie name. That is definitely a thing that it would just be some foreign horror film.
But here's the thing, Adam, is what I've noticed is that in my limited capacity to understand, all Swedish looks like it is written by aliens.
Yes.
It all looks like it belongs in Stargate.
It's true. So this is Ingmar Bergman, not Ingrid.
Yeah, you said that in the previous episode, too.
I said that. I'm sorry.
I didn't say anything because I didn't want to hurt your feelings.
Thank you for ignoring my shortcomings for once. That was very kind of you.
I'm sorry.
Ingmar Bergman. Ingrid Bergman was in the last Ingmar Bergman movie,
right, which is
Sonata, which was a brilliant movie. And we've also watched Ingmar Bergman's. How did I just lose the name of the Seventh Seal?
Yeah,
a very long time ago, and it was not as good an episode.
No, but here's the thing: is now that I have more material to work with, I really feel like I know that this is not an original work, obviously, but I really, really like this film. And I liked Autumn Sonata, too. Not nearly as much as I like Seven Seals, so I'm kind of like in the position where sometimes this happens, where I feel like the thing that I'm supposed to know from the creator is the thing I like the least from the creator. I don't know. Because this was wonderful. And it's not just because of the source material. I mean, the source material is also wonderful.
This is wonderful,
but the way he presents it is wonderful.
It's so... Yes.
I'm going to use that word a lot today.
Wonderful. One more time.
Wonderful.
It's clearly that Bergman is in love with Mozart and in love with the Magic Flute itself. And,
there's
knows what it can be, and in love with theater. We get a lot of. This is a very theatrically set film, and even like with Henry V, we started on the stage, and then we slowly moved into a filmed version. With this, we have something like that happening. We start on the stage, and we become more film centric, but we never lose. It's shot like a movie, but we never lose the set pieces, the background stuff.
No, and he goes out of his way.
That makes it a stage production.
And
he goes out of his way to give us little views of backstage, even while the action's taking place. We continually cut to the audience. Specifically that little girl who is Bergman's granddaughter.
Yes.
Which isn't super important to know, but still isn't that cute.
Yeah, it is cute.
And during the overture, when we establish all that, when we establish the audience anticipating waiting the stage, and we get this universality of opera, of music, of Mozart, of whatever he's trying to say is universal. We just have such a diverse group, people and cultures represented within the crowd, and everyone intently waiting for this to start. Even the children, even the old people, everyone wants this to happen, and is patiently waiting to view the performance. And it's Bergman trying to sell his love just as much.
Yeah,
and
no, and
there's so much to love.
There is.
I mean,
there
it's
no, I will say
it's
about
not like you need to really. I'm sorry, you don't really need to go out of your way to try and sell that this is something to love.
No, you don't. But like, oddly enough, that was probably the hardest part of the film for me. Was that the overture is like so it'll probably come up again, but I basically watched this movie from beginning to end with my son, who is 3 years old, does not speak Swedish, and does not read English. But I find that his reactions, and I'm going to probably bring this up again, are so close to my own. It was kind of amazing.
Yeah.
It was what was amazing is that the way this film is shot and acted is so sincere that he picked up on the emotions and the things that were going on with literally no verbal information to confirm what was going on, other than the few times that I told him what the names of the characters were because he asked me. He said, "Who's that?" But during the face part at the beginning, both me and him had a similar reaction in that, what's going on here? Because it was Ingmar Bergman, I was somewhat concerned that things were going to... I wasn't sure where things were going. I was like, this is the Magic Flute. Are we actually going to get to watch the Magic Flute? But then we do. And I was so happy when we finally went into the show that I feel like I felt the same as the people in the audience when we finally got to the show. It's like, oh, here we go, you know?
Well, there's a lot of establishment in the overture, and at the same time, the overture it's itself an establishment. That was the function of the overture is to give hints and others things. We
need to set a theme
to come about the music, to set a theme. And in a way, we're setting that theme here. So we've got shots outside of the theater that ostensibly this is being filmed at. Unfortunately, they couldn't actually film that at that theater. The theater he wanted to film at was one of the few surviving Baroque theaters in Sweden. Maybe the only one in Sweden. But all those establishing outdoor shots are that theater, or that space. And it turned out that they couldn't film it there because the structure just wouldn't have supported a film crew. So instead, they completely recreated it stronger.
Wow, really?
Like that flywheel that you see in the background every so often is the wind machine from the theater that they recreated elsewhere on a soundstage. But yeah, very painstakingly, I'm sure. But then I've never seen the original to compare, so I don't actually know.
But it felt exactly like what I wanted the theater that I've... It was perfect for what we were being presented.
So it is an overture that establishes that this will be a love story to the Magic Flute and to Mozart as much as it is a presentation of his work. But even still, some of my favorite moments in the film are during the intermission.
Oh, the intermission's wonderful.
We don't actually get the film. The intermission title card is up for like 5 seconds before what we actually see is what the actors are doing during intermission.
Yeah, so and I love it. It's beautiful.
The Queen of the Night and her minions are smoking under a no smoking sign. One guy is reading another script, pan to one of the minion kids reading a Donald Duck comic.
Yeah. No, it's wonderful.
And everybody's just hanging around.
And then we've got what is it? I'm gonna blank on the names now. I feel so stupid. Our two main characters playing chess.
Yes, Tamino and
Carmina. Yeah. Oh man, we're gonna have a problem, Adam.
They're all meant to be kind of close.
I know, and
you know,
I'm particularly bad at remembering them.
Gina and
I'm very bad at remembering them, though.
It's all right. These were all, I believe, all of these were Swedish opera or Nordic opera actors and singers who were cast, which is an interesting note only because Mozart's original was written specifically for the cast that would be performing it. So the part of the Queen of the Night was written for his sister-in-law, and he made a joke about her not needing to change herself to get into character. But more on that note, it's written for her because it's written in her range. The Queen of the Night, especially in that her second area, where she's very angry, she hits some super high notes that are higher than people, common sopranos can hit. But he wrote them because he knew she could do it. And Monostatos has a lot of low notes because he knew that the guy who was playing him, Mozart knew the guy who was playing him could hit them. But at the same time, it being a mix of comedy and tragedy, he had a lot of comedic actors who weren't necessarily trained opera, so he wrote a lot of pieces in mind with those actors and what they'd be able to do, which is why a lot of the music pieces you'll find start with one tone to tell the actor where they needed to be, and they'll echo like there'll be an oboe or something echoing.
Right.
It's
the almost
singer.
What you would expect in a much lower. At some points, it's almost what you would expect in a much lower grade of music, where you're going to have your musical accompaniment matching your vocal, just so
just so there's not problems.
Yeah, so that everybody knows exactly where everybody is. And everybody's hitting the right notes at the right time, and which is kind of a weird thing because it's also Mozart, and you expect it to be extremely complex, but at the same time, it makes it kind of whimsical.
Yeah,
and I like it.
It is, and I think it's complex and whimsical in a lot of ways. And its whimsicalness is obviously why this is one of Mozart's most famous works. But it's beautiful and it's happy. Bergman. I suppose, contrarily, this was recorded in the very traditional way of recording a musical for film. The actors singing and then and playing, and then that being recorded and played back so that everyone could lip sync until they got it right.
Interesting.
So he didn't do quite as in depth as Mozart did to make sure everything would be all right. But at the same time, he was creating something very specific too. Very interesting to note. Technically, this was shot for television. It was shot for the 50th anniversary of Swedish television and broadcast New Year's Day, 1975, on Swedish television. That was its premiere. And if I read correctly, it is the first made-for-television film, at least, to shoot with a stereo soundtrack.
Really?
To great effect. You listening with headphones, I'm sure, if you didn't pick up on this, it's only because it's much more natural and well,
fitting. Actually, I was not listening with headphones because this was... It was a lucky situation where there was I knew ahead of time that I could watch this with my son without problems.
Yeah. So, but one thing, there's a lot of times where, specifically, I remember noticing it in the scene where Monostatos, I'm never going to say his name right.
No, yeah, well, they're tough.
He is lusting after Pamina in her sleep.
I remember that.
And then he slinks away as he sees the Queen of the Night approach. and he is whispering off in left audio as her footsteps are coming on in right audio.
Oh, I didn't pick. I did pick up on some other of those audio cues. I didn't pick up on that one, but I mainly because my copy had some problems with it at that point. Actually, like it started stuttering, and so I had to kind of skip ahead. Yeah, I had a couple problems like that. But no, there were a couple other occasions where like you could pick up that people's positioning in the world based on their audio.
Yeah, on their audio. It was a 3-dimensional sound creation, which left-right stereo is hard to do anyway.
Right.
Without a complete surround sound, that's very difficult. But it worked out. And to the sound engineer, congratulations, because
you did a good job, especially since you were producing this for TV in 1975.
Yeah. Yes,
good work. Good on you. No, there's it's really the problem I'm having is that I have a really hard time separating the source material from Bergman, because the source material is what I really love and want to talk about, but his interpretation feels so good, feels so natural, feels like what I would want to watch on a stage that
exactly.
I feel like all we're going to end up doing is just talking about the play. You know what I mean? Like, I can't... It's hard to talk about, like, what he did.
Yeah. I think the last time we talked about an adaptation like this, besides, obviously, Last Temptation of Christ was an adaptation of a book that we're just not familiar with. And we've had a number of those, but things, where we
had like Great Expectations,
the source material. Great Expectations is what I'm getting at, and those adaptations of classic British lit that we're familiar with, where we're familiar enough that we can stop talking about the source material. Whereas here, the source material is just as great as this production.
Well,
this production is
right, and then I feel like he takes a few liberties, but not a ton of them, to the point where like the difference being that because he presented it as a stage production, basically I know that we get shots that are not stage production presentation. Okay, we get a lot of them.
There's a lot of cut-ins and a lot of close-ups,
but we are still presented with the idea that we are watching. We're basically, and you do see this in modern recordings of stage productions anyway, that you would watch. If you watch a film that is a stage production these days, a lot of times they've got enough cameras positioned in enough places that they can do some pretty hard close-ups and stuff on important characters at important times, and there's enough editing that goes into them that they don't look that far off of what we have here. That it still feels like a stage production to me. And unlike our interpretations of like Great Expectations or any of those other ones where we're going from book to movie, we're going from stage production to stage production?
We're going from Germanic opera to Swedish opera to filmed Swedish opera.
Right, but it still feels like a film of a Swedish interpretation of a Germanic opera, so much so that I feel like it's even harder to parse out, to separate the two.
It's very hard to separate.
So we might as well, I guess we can just talk about the story of the Magic Flute.
Well, one reason that it's hard to separate is that Bergman is so intent on it being a stage production. We already kind of talked about this, but his use of cinematic stuff is sparse. We do get the close-ups, and obviously we kind of manipulate spatial interaction
we do.
When we cut to Pagina or Papagino asleep in his dressing room when he realizes he's about to miss his cue. He jumps up and hurriedly runs through the backstage and gets help getting into costume. So, but things like that are very few and far between, and we get most of what else we get as far as backstage stuff is cut shots of people, the other actors reacting. So
Right.
Like when Tamino first plays his flute, I believe, if I remember correctly, we get Tamino playing his flute, and we see Pamina watching him from off stage, and at the same time, and with them playing chess during the intermission, there's a lot of reinforcement of the characters going on.
Right,
with the
right.
actors
Yeah, we do get that
in
a little
their-
bit of that extra
yeah.
stuff that we wouldn't get in a normal
Yeah.
play.
Well, like it's like the queen of the night, and all of her minions
Yeah,
smoking cigarettes under the no smoking sign.
Yeah, and that only, to me, it doesn't. Unlike a lot of interpretations, really all he's doing is magnifying the characters. He's extending them beyond the boundary of the play.
Yeah.
A little bit, which
and
is
beyond the boundary of the stage.
right. Exactly,
which,
that's what I
mean,
mean. Yeah,
it's
exactly,
similar,
yeah.
but yeah.
The only time that I really noticed, and the only time it really struck me, that we got really in a visual way rather than a this kind of acting sort of way, out of the actual play was where he encounters, I forget the character's name, but he Tamino encounters the member of the Brotherhood.
Oh, the first priest he talks
Yes,
to.
we very much feel
Where
like we're
it's-
in a set at that one spot.
Yeah.
And that's the only
Yeah.
time I really felt like we weren't on the stage. And
Yeah.
then he immediately
I-
pulls us back by showing the girl.
I think that's that really feels like that because it's the first time that we're really stuck on the set. There are other points later, especially with the larger crowd scenes and the battle scene, where it's obviously not being staged on the same stage that we've been seeing,
Right.
which is only about 25
Yeah,
feet across.
you can tell sometimes you're like, wait a minute. There's
Yeah.
not enough space where we were.
But that's that point where they're in the small room on either side of a table is the first time that we're really aware that we're no longer
Right, and
on
I
the
became
stage.
very, very hyper aware of that. And then I really
Yeah.
liked, though, Bergman actually addresses that
Yes.
by immediately after those kind of scenes showing us something to remind us that we're still in the theater.
Yes.
Because he knows that there's a very powerful awareness in this film
Yeah.
of when the audience is going to go, wait a minute. That's not where we were. What's
Exactly.
going on
and this
here?
is a love story to theater, just
Yeah.
as much as much as anything else.
And I just loved that. I thought that was that when because it was like it's like literally he could hear what I was thinking. That in my head I went, wait a minute.
That he's anticipating your
Yeah,
reactions.
like
and
because
already
like almost as soon as I heard it in my head.
the sign of a really great director,
Right.
knowing your audience so well that even 40 years
Right,
on,
he knows what I'm
the
thinking.
way people are watching
Yeah.
this movie. Yeah,
And he does it a couple times, and every time it happened, I was like, wow, that was surprising. How smoothly that worked.
yeah,
And it's kind of amazing to think, 40 years later, to think that even 100 years later, that will still work. You know what I mean?
So
I just think that's amazing.
Yeah.
To me, that sort of
Definitely.
the transcendence of time
And
is remarkable.
yeah, and the transcendence of time is that's why we're still listening to
Well,
Mozart.
yeah, exactly. And then if you extrapolate that out further,
Yeah.
that Mozart did the same thing, and we've crossed more than
Yeah.
200 years with this same
Yeah.
story. We're eliciting the same reactions and the same feelings.
Exactly.
To the point where, like, the thing that we got about earlier is that me and my son are having similar reactions, and he can't even understand what they are saying.
Exactly.
He looks at me a couple times and he goes, "He's funny, huh?" I'm like, you can't even understand what he's saying, kid. But you're right.
It's the emotion, it's the acting. Papagino is as he gets a little physical.
Yeah, and there's enough of that.
There's some physical comedy, and there's some physical comedy when Papagina shows up as the old hag.
Yeah, my son liked that a lot.
Yeah,
And no, and
sure.
it's just things like that where just it's really it's amazing how well it keys into its audience. Both our director and our source material key into the audience so well. It's just kind of phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, you did mention that there are some changes, and I think some of them are actually pretty substantial. I think there are also things that if some of them, if Mozart had the ability to do, he might have done. For instance, when Papagena first shows up as the old hag, the audience themselves have actually already seen that she's not just an old hag, and because we know that she's a beautiful woman and it's all a ploy against Papageno, we can laugh at it, and he laughs at it because she looks so ridiculous. Even though he still buys into it because he's still got to say the lines.
Right.
But at the same time, there's some changes, like making Sarastro Pamina's father. In the original text, the original play, during the part where the queen's singing about begging Pamina or coercing Pamina into killing Sarastro by saying that she'll cut her off if she doesn't. If I remember correctly, in the original, that she mentions that Pamina's father is dead. So you can argue ideologically he's dead, in that they stand as opposed. He is dead to her.
Right.
So it is not something that Bergman's creating whole cloth. It is a reading of the play from many years on that Sarastro is her father, but it's not. It is explicitly stated that he's not. Almost, you can argue intent, but the literal words are that he's not. Which Wikipedia, whoever wrote the Wikipedia article, argues that that helps to remove the sexism of the story, because Sarastro's argument that he took Pamina away from the Queen of the Night because she needs a man in her life and not to be influenced by this evil woman. In the original is more all women are dumb liars and bad people, whereas in this it can be argued that he's more saying that the Queen of the Night specifically is crazy. Yeah.
Well, and I could see that argument. Okay, go ahead.
I could see that argument, except that during the second trial, when Tamino is being forced to ignore Pamina as she shows up. After that, I think, is actually during the apology. She says that she tries to make some excuse for her mother's behavior, or she somehow bows to her mother, and Tamino says, "Well, she's still got the heart of a woman."
Yeah, no, yeah,
so there's still
and that's
sexism
not
still
the
there.
only incident.
Yeah,
I mean, look, okay, when we deal with these kind of works, we have to face some facts.
Yeah,
sexism.
Yeah. The past was different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, we right off the bat, we get the fact that the Queen of the Night promises Tamino that if he rescues her daughter, she will be his forever. We already, within like 3 minutes at the start of this film,
the woman as reward.
Yeah, we are already in a purely sexist environment, so we need to just get over
it's
that.
Good. It's good that we've, and it's not adding anything. Bergman didn't create the scene where, what's his face, Papageno gets to Pamina first and shows her a picture of Tamino, and she falls in love with him as well. So and eventually, and even in the original, it's Pamina at the end who says, "Hey, dummy, use the flute."
Yeah, there's some...
Yeah. So, it's there. There's also some racism in it that's a little less explicit here. Monostatos, the evil Moor.
He has a Moor, yeah.
And And he is mentioned as a Moor, despite the fact that
he is very clearly not a Moor.
Blackface.
Yeah.
He's not in traditional blackface, but in redface to be more of the devil, which brings up different issues, I think, because he's still named as a Moor.
Yeah.
But in the original, Pamina is more afraid of him solely because he's a Moor. And
it does come
scary
up
black man.
in.
And
it's still in there. You didn't cut out that dialogue.
We
explain.
at least get hints of that.
Yeah, we still have the references to why it's terrifying. Why the Moor is terrifying.
Yeah,
is still in there about like what he will do to her and stuff. But again, you know,
it's
the times
the past,
it was made.
The past is a foreign country.
Yeah, and I try not to. You know, if it was made in the last 100 years, I feel an obligation to look negatively upon that sort of stuff. But when you're dealing with stuff this old, I kind of, you know, if you're going to avoid anything with that sort of objectionable content in it, you're going to have a very limited supply of things that you can actually enjoy.
Well, I think we got in the same thing at one point when we were talking about Hitchcock. You know, if your sexism in Hitchcock is very blatant.
Yes,
it exists, and it's not just from characters; it's from directorship. It's if you need to work past that, even though it's a problem, and we need to recognize.
Yeah, we can't ignore
these are
it.
things that need to be changed. We can't ignore it, but we need to work past it in order. We can't just write off the entire work because of distasteful things that we're doing. It's not an excuse to feel that way by saying we can't just say, well, that's just the past and
right.
We still need to engage in that.
But I would say that in this situation, I can deal with this a lot more easily than I can deal with the Hitchcock version.
Yes.
In that the Hitchcock one often I feel detracts from the story, like in an objectionable way.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it actually makes the story not as good because the woman is a vapid waste of screen real estate. Whereas here, the men... Well, okay, so while there is still some severe sexism and obviously racism, nobody in the film, especially when you have Papagino and others also playing the fool who are not stereotypes of some race or sex... Yeah, it kind of helps balance it out a little bit. I don't feel like the film.
It does.
I don't feel like the story suffers as much from it as because it is also very clearly fairy tale. I can't speak English now anymore. No. Fairy tale.
You got that going for it.
So the sexism is just as unrealistic as everything else. Yeah.
And one thing that is more pronounced in the original work, and I think it's just because we're so far removed, and so Bergman doesn't play on it, but. Another thing we need to think about when we're thinking about the problems of presentation, like sexism and racism, I think, is that in a lot of ways, and I don't know how much this is interpretation from other people and how much it was intent, but there's a lot of talk about this, the Magic Flute being about the Enlightenment, the Freemasons, versus the Church of Rome, and the Queen of the Night literally representing Austrian Queen Marie Theresa, who was very religious, and the Church of Rome, the Roman Catholic Church, being more and more controlling for financial gain instead of the gain of knowledge, and that's a lot of what the early Enlightenment was reacting against too. The church was corrupt as far as a repository for world knowledge, so they wanted to broaden that, but still also Freemasonry and the Enlightenment era, as much as they wanted to broaden freedoms and knowledge, still not real keen on giving women the vote. So,
right. Well,
the women are still.
Thought about that interpretation.
Yeah.
But then again, I try not to give too much credence to that kind of interpretation.
At the same time,
in general, but
at the same time, what Mozart intended with all of that, it doesn't really matter all that much.
Right. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. We get into this thing where, regardless of what his intent was, he created an extremely enjoyable story to watch.
Yeah.
And so, despite the sexism and the racism, we can enjoy
and
it.
you do downplay that quite a bit, even in the original production was kind of set in ancient Egypt, whereas this is more of a timeless presentation. The prayer to the gods of light, for instance, is originally a prayer to Isis and Osiris.
Oh, interesting.
So it taking it out of that place. Allusions to ancient Egypt are a pretty common masonry thing too, especially at the time. So you get that, and eliminates that interpretation in a lot of ways. So,
well, and for me, makes it actually a
made.
little bit more clean in a certain sort of way. It kind of makes it just feels that timelessness is nice. It's
a timeless fairy tale instead of being a very specific set thing. And we can forgive a lot of our problems with it ideologically by just reminding us that it's a fairy tale. At its heart, this is a fairy tale. There's an evil queen. There's a complicated king.
Yeah, very complicated king.
Yeah, who at the same time, on the one hand, no, he's not as evil as the queen wants to make him out to be. But on the other hand, he still kidnapped his daughter because he thinks his wife is evil.
Yeah, he's also a benevolent
she
dictator.
Needs the influence of a man, and he's a benevolent dictator. So, yeah,
because everyone knows that he. What was I forget the quote now? He makes wise decisions, and we gladly obey.
Yes.
It's benevolent, but still a dictator.
Yeah, he's cool.
But I still like him. One of my favorite characters.
I like him too. One of my favorite characters is actually the gatekeeper in the Chamber of Trials.
Oh yeah, no, he's great. That's some classic stuff right there. I can't believe the guys that are sending me or whatever.
Yeah, the people he sends me, and he rolls his eyes. But yeah, and he pops up every so often through that whole sequence, and it's really fun. I'm sorry. For some reason, I have written in my notes because prior to that scene with her sleeping, Monstados is more of an enforcer than an outright bad guy, and of course, eventually he turns on his team and joins up with the Queen to attack. But I have written in my notes, Monstados sure took a turn for the creepy in the "Let me sing while I fondle her."
I know, man, and that's where my copy got all weird.
Yeah,
and so for probably a solid it got really jittery. Okay, we started. So we would pause every couple seconds during that event. So my son got to watch an extended version of the fondling.
No.
It was troublesome. But no, it was he really does take a he does and professing his love, and it gets really stalkery and weird. But it's kind of nice because it helps us establish him as being a bad guy.
Yeah. One thing I really like about some of the changes they made is that they didn't just make changes, but they also explored the ramifications of those changes. So, for instance, in a lot of productions, Papageno's costume is he's covered in the feathers of the birds that he's killed because he's the Queen's court fowler, and so he's a little monstrous in his costume, or at least he's fun still because he's still the same character, but he's confusing to look at and possibly frightening if you're not familiar with him.
Right.
So when he first meets Monstados, when he's talking to Pamina, and Monstados walks in. And in this movie, Monstados threatens him and throws him into the orchestra pit, I believe.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
More or less. He throws him out a gate, and he's just out of the scene. And then he pops up behind the table. It's a great moment.
It is great, too. Yeah.
But in the original, the way that scene progresses is that Papagino pops up covered in the feathers, and Monstados runs away because he's afraid of this creature. So it's it affects characterization too.
Right? Yeah, you can't just change that part.
You can't make arbitrary changes
without changing the story a little bit. But again, like, I kind of like how it all plays out in this version.
Oh yeah, and this has become a very definitive version. Kenneth Branagh in 2006 made a film version of this with a script by Stephen Fry, and they follow Bergman's lead in a lot of ways.
Which, by the way, is the version that Hulu tried to tell me was the Ingmar Bergman version.
Well, that is not true.
Yes, they even present the cover art for the Ingmar version, and then they play 2006.
Oh, no.
Yeah, to the point where I got about I got maybe 2 or 3 minutes. I was like, "This is not what I'm looking for."
Yes.
So maybe someday I'll go watch that version. I don't know how good it is, but I'm kind of curious.
Yeah. Apparently,
set in World War II, I think.
World
War One. I'm not
something
sure.
like that. World War One or World War II.
Sorry. Keep going.
Monstados does not commit suicide at the end of Mozart's version. And he really offhandedly does in this.
Yeah.
It's obviously that their mission has failed. Sarastro shows up and the sun is rising, and then he just stabs himself in the heart.
Yeah, I know, it's really weird. It's like, it's not even full frame. It's kind of off in the corner. It's
yeah, he's like behind the queen as she's reacting to the sun.
I'm not sure why he does that, but oh well.
The motivation is, I assume that in the Magic Flute, it's been so long since I've seen a production of it. I assume that he just kind of disappears at the end of the script,
and they would like to make him
a
not
reason for him to just disappearing. Yeah, but I have no idea. So,
no, yeah, I experienced a moment of, is he stabbing himself?
Yeah, exactly.
But but he's such for me kind of a non-character anyway. That I mean, he serves his purpose as all the characters really in this story do. He's just there for a purpose. He's not. A lot of the characters are not really characters so much as elements of the story, and so for him, whether he stabs himself or not, I kind of had already pushed him out of my mind. And so watching him stab himself in the corner was odd.
Yeah. Well, once he joins forces with the Queen, he's less of an important character.
Well, right, and he's fulfilled his final purpose anyway at that point.
Yeah, he's the one who obviously helps her out in trying to enact her revenge, but anyway, it's not something that needs to be focused on, I guess. He's there.
Right.
The actor who played Monstados, by the way, is named Ragnar Ulfung, and I love Swedish names.
No, that's an awesome name, by the way.
Ridiculous. One of the priests is played by a guy named Sixten Fark.
Oh, there we are. Yeah. No, they're all awesome
Fark.
though. We have Sixten Fark, Arne Hendrickson, Sven Erik Jacobsson, Ulf Johannesson, and then Folk Johnson. Oh man.
Yes.
They're
wonderful.
Beautiful names. And then some I don't even know how to pronounce. Papagino's name is beyond my comprehension. This is the kind of name where we suddenly get into Stargate territory.
Yes, Haken Hagajard. There's
circles
above letters. I assume those are
Stargate codes, and if we plug in Hagen
Obviously.
Guard into the Stargate, we'll go to some planet.
Yeah, a planet of sweets.
Yeah. Ooh. Exciting.
That would be exciting.
It would be a heck of an
I
episode.
hope it's a snowy planet of sweets.
I kind of hope. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, but no. Yeah, no. But like, I loved watching Papagino in this version.
Yeah.
I really like his acting. That basically within seconds of his appearance, that's when my son looked over and he goes, "He's funny, huh?" And I'm like,
I'm sure.
Yep, he is.
Oh no,
And-
he's obviously a very gifted comedic stage
Yeah,
actor.
he does a
Just
very good
in
job.
The pantomime that he does. It's
One
very
and his
physical
facial
and-
expressions are just
Yeah,
wonderful.
exactly.
Like it's
Yeah.
you follow them so easily. I just thought it was just a joy to watch, and then my son spent the rest of the evening running around playing the pan flute.
Does he actually have
No,
a pan
but
flute to play,
pantomiming
or-
a pan flute as he
Yes.
ran around the house going "Woo!" with his hand. It's no,
Yes.
it
Oh, that's so cute.
really had a pretty profound effect on my family this evening. This film,
Good.
so
I'm glad. Good. Well, you can watch it every day now.
well,
It will be the new Thomas the Tank
yeah,
Engine.
right. No, I to the point where I'm considering going out and trying to purchase this. But the problem is I would really love to get. It would be wonderful if I could get an English version that is as good as this. I don't.
Yeah, I don't.
It doesn't probably
I don't know of such a
exist,
thing.
and it's
Obviously,
sad.
the Branagh directed, Stephen Fry written English version from 2006 might be. You can give it a chance, but it's certainly not going to be as.
It was certainly not going to be as.
Branagh's a great director.
But it's also, from
Yeah,
what
but-
I saw of it, is not stage
Yeah.
production. It's a movie.
Yeah,
And
It's very
part of
different.
what makes this so enjoyable for me is the fact that it is like watching a stage production taken to 11. And
Yeah.
and I want to keep I that's what I want. I want to maintain that. And I don't think that exists.
Yeah.
So sadly, my son will have to learn how to read in order to enjoy this with his father as time goes on. But
yeah. Well, good luck.
Yeah.
There is an adaptation in English called Arctic Magic Flute,
what?
set in rural Alaska.
Okay.
If you get sung in English, setting the action in northern Alaska at an unspecified post-apocalyptic future date.
What?
I am super interested in
what's
this.
it called?
It is, unfortunately, I don't think it's a film. It is a stage version, first staged in February 8th, 2007 in Juneau.
Man.
It is just called Arctic Magic Flute.
Man, that should be a movie.
Yeah.
Well, no, see, that's the thing, though, is almost everybody's, almost all the other versions of this you see are not stage production style. Except for the only other one you can find is the one that's the original German version that you can find. If you type in the Magic Flute,
Yeah.
this is the first one. That's the first one that'll pop up. Is I forget where it was performed, but with this hyper dramatic picture of the Queen of the Night on the cover in blues and purples.
Well, one thing I really liked about this is not only did they translate the German into Swedish that worked and worked lyrically, but then when they translated the subtitles,
Sometimes
in
they
English,
rhymed too. It was amazing.
They were always lyrical, or almost. Always
Well, I
lyrical.
tried to say it. I kind of gave up saying them all in my head, so I kind of
Yeah.
lost track of whether or not they were all lyrical. But quite a few of them were.
I don't know if lyrically they fit the music, but they certainly were. They were poetic.
Yeah, they were.
and-
Like, there's a lot of
they had the
good
beat
rhyming
and
scheme and stuff in there.
Yeah.
I was impressed, except for my copy had spelling errors. But let's not nitpick.
Did you watch it on YouTube? Is that what happened?
Well, yeah. Like, there's no stream.
yeah, I got this from the
Yeah,
library.
I was really disappointed. I was really hoping this would be something that would be widely available, but it's practically non-existent.
That's unfortunate. Well, tell you what, I will steal my version from the library and mail it to
Yes, please.
No, I won't, Pat. That's a bad idea. I'm not going to steal from the library.
Sorry. I would hate to lead you down a bad path. First stealing movies from the library, before you know it, you're raping and pillaging.
It's true. That's how that works.
Yes. So stealing from the library is a gateway crime.
It is.
But no, I was just a little bit disappointed that I would have thought that, considering when and where this was made and the circumstances, that this would be like one of the ones that would be hyper available. Considering it was a Swedish TV production from 1975, I was like, oh man, I'm just going to be able to type this bad boy in and then I'm going to have like options everywhere. And turns out it just does not exist in a digital format, hardly at all. And it's always disappointing because that's the kind of thing that
it does not.
A movie this good, I want to be widely available to anybody who wants to watch it. You know what I mean? I want to be able to tell people, oh yeah, just go watch it on Netflix, man, or something like that, and just enjoy it.
Yeah.
But you can't say that to people because you say, well, okay, first thing you need to do is fly to America. Then you need to sign up. You need to get a green card. Then what I want you to do is I want you to sign up for a library card. And then I want you to go to the library, and I want you to rent the Ingmar Bergman version of the Magic Flute from that library.
Yes.
It's a bit of a production.
Well, you can buy it from Amazon. It is for sale.
Yes.
But only a DVD, not a digital copy.
Which is what really made me sad. Yeah. So I will probably...
The Brana version is on Netflix for some reason.
Yes, it is, and it's also on Hulu.
Probably not actually that surprising, but yeah. Anyway.
Well, yeah, no.
Anything else?
This is one of those ones where it's so good. We've talked about it, but I feel like I always feel like when they're this good, we just basically talk about how awesome they are. But you got when they're this awesome, there's not a lot you can say.
It's true. So I think we're going to pull this to a close.
Yeah, I think so.
Next time we'll be talking about what is it? Le Million by René Clair, 1931. Is it French? I think it's French. Yes, it's French.
I have no idea.
And that is available on Hulu Plus, so you won't be that.
I won't have to fly to America to get a library card to watch it.
Yeah, it is the story of a winning lottery ticket, traveling through different people's hands, I believe. And apparently it was big influence on the Marx Brothers and Charlie Chaplin.
It actually sounds kind of interesting, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So another musical comedy for us next time.
I like where the Criterion Collection is going these days. Musical comedy is right up my alley.
Yeah, I know you like it. After that, there is no way the next movie, based on its cover, is going to be a musical comedy.
Please do.
2 episodes from now, it's a movie called Vagabond, 1985, Agnes Varda, also French.
Not a musical comedy.
I'm gonna
do my.
It's described as sparse and poetic.
Here's what I'm gonna say, Adam. I think maybe from now on, I'm going to try to see all the movies we watch through a lens of musical
comedy.
See how it goes.
I think that will not last very long.
I don't think so either.
But good luck.
Yeah, I'm going to do my best.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's Lost in Criterion. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
listening to Lost in Criterion, a production of With Two Brains. The show is hosted by Adam Glass and John Patrick Owatari Dorgan. Jonathan Hape did the music, and Adam Glass also edited it all together. Feel free to contact us by email via lostincriterion@withtwobrains.com or join us on the web at www.lostincriterion.com.